Thanks so much, Ed. Just by way of logistics, super glad to have everybody on this call today. As you'll notice, it is a Zoom meeting, so everybody can come off mute and participate in the audience-led discussion and Q&A at the end of the session. But while our panelists are speaking or any of your co-attendees are speaking, we do welcome you to stay on mute. With that, Ed, if we could flip to the next slide. I think this one's actually yours, and then I'll cover the agenda next.
I have to find my way back to the unmute button. As I said, this is a meeting of the NASEO Building Committee. And just real quickly, we have a new member of the NASEO Building Committee, Chris Anderson, who is the director of the, sorry, I'm just realizing my notes on my screen are covered up by my slide deck. Chris Anderson is the director of the Energy Resources Division of the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority. We're really excited to have Chris on the leadership team to provide us with a perspective from the Southeast. He's joining our leadership team of Julie Staveland, who's one of our co-chairs, Suzanne DeRoche, who's with us today from NYSERDA, and our other co-chair, Katie Bergfeld from the District of Columbia. We've got Adam Baird from Colorado, Blake Shalide from Oregon, and then the NASEO staff points of contact are myself and Jasmine Shia, who is also here today. I think that goes back to you now.
Thanks, Ed. All right. Well, really quick, NASEO has a few resources to share at the very top of the hour today. Otherwise, the rest of our agenda is a very exciting panel of presenters who will speak to our topic today of emerging technologies and state leadership in commercial building electrification. We're super glad for the diversity of perspectives we have here, ranging from state energy offices that are leading through their portfolio of projects, as well as perspectives from the federal agency of the U.S. Department of Energy, the programs that they're operating to support broad deployment and adoption of these new technologies. And then also an industry's perspective from Rheem, one of our NASEO affiliates, and also a participant of the federal program that we'll be highlighting today. And then, as I mentioned before, we'll also be taking questions. Please feel free to drop those in the chat throughout the presentation as questions arise. And then we'll save the question and answer and discussion portion for the very end after we've heard from all of our presenters. Next slide, please. Here, we just wanted to highlight a few of the recent NASEO reports and resources that have come out since our last quarterly committee convening. I will, if Maddie Kohler is on the line, welcome her to come off mute and say a few words about her new publication on home energy score.
Yes, happy to. Thank you, Jasmine. I'm very excited to share with everybody a report that we published last week. Like Jasmine mentioned, this is based on home energy score. What we've done in this report is review some of the more popular energy vulnerability metrics. And over the course of that literature review, we established that there are not great energy vulnerability metrics that include home performance, like the actual structure of a house, and measuring that. So we came to the conclusion and are proposing that we could use a tool from the Department of Energy, the home energy score, as a method for understanding the necessary upgrades in a house. So what we're proposing, and this is something that home energy score can do, is that we can compare the current home energy score that measures how efficient your house is with a potential home energy score, which is how well your house could perform if you make cost-effective improvements. And that gap helps you understand just how necessary those improvements are. If you have a big gap, you have a serious need for energy improvements, and those improvements are cost effective. Whereas if you have a smaller gap, you have less of a need for improvements, and there aren't many cost effective options that would get you that increase in your score. So that is sort of like what the report outlines is the need for a framework. And this all sort of like comes from a place of us really diving deep into the concept of energy burden, which I'm sure you are all familiar with, which is the percentage of your income that you spend on your utility bills. And we wanted something that could be parallel to that, that explores the actual structure and performance of a house. And so I hope everybody will check it out. It's on the NASEO website. We'll be having a webinar next month that goes more in depth into the research and our next steps. So we'll be working with the national labs to actually generate those scores for each census check. And then we'll be able to sort of share those results with everybody. And then say energy offices and others will be able to see which census tracts have the greatest need for improvement. And then you could layer that with other information that you know, and potentially use it to prioritize your investments. So like I said, feel free to reach out if you've got any questions, any follow-up ideas. I'd be happy to hear it. But with that, I'll hand it over back to you, Jasmine.
Thanks, Maddie. Super exciting publication. Congratulations on getting it out the door. And I won't belabor the too much more on our existing resources. A lot of these can be found on our website, and this schools report, which we were also really happy to get out the door, actually had a whole webinar overviewing the various recommendations on state actions to support local education agencies and energy efficiency and indoor air quality improvements. But that all was covered this past Monday during a webinar that has been recorded with slides shared on our Buildings Committee webpage, and I'll be happy to drop that in the chat shortly. Next slide, please. And so we also wanted to capture a few of our recent and upcoming events. The second bullet point here covers the webinar that I was just mentioning that we did to overview our recent report on school energy efficiency. Otherwise, I would welcome Rodney Sobin from our team to provide a quick overview of our participation in BTO's peer review. And then I'll call on a few others to overview our upcoming events.
Yeah, several of us participated in the BTO peer review, which is an annual event in which the Building Technologies Office reviews various of its projects, mainly sort of in research and development, but also demonstration and validation projects, such as the Connected Communities projects, which are concerning grid interactive buildings and demand flexibility. There are also a handful of projects that are more oriented towards technology commercialization and supporting that process. NASEO is partnered with three projects that were reviewed. One is PV GEMS, which is led by the University of Central Florida and the Florida Solar Energy Center, and concerns the idea of demonstrating and potentially commercializing a pod-based addition that can be made to manufactured homes or single-family homes with solar, battery, water heater, heat pump that would help electrify those sorts of units. Very early, not commercial yet, not ready for prime time, but we're one of the partners on that. The UDERM's iCommunity project is a connected communities project led by Pacific Corp and Rocky Mountain Power. This is oriented towards demand flexibility with the diverse buildings, including batteries, the smart thermostats, photovoltaics, and provide those DERs being able to provide grid services, including frequency regulation, peak reduction, and resource adequacy. And finally, there's a project acronym is HEATER, led by Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation with the technology provider that is demonstrating a gas-fired gas absorption heat pump that can provide greater efficiencies than conventional combustion-based processes. And I think I babbled on enough, so I'll hand it back. Thank you.
Thank you, Rod. And I've just dropped a link in the chat to summarize all of our upcoming events along with the publicly available registration links. So all of the information under the upcoming events can be found on naseo.org/events. All right, without taking too much more time, I do want to pass things over to Suzanne DeRoche, our moderator for today, to get us started with the panel discussion. Suzanne, over to you.
Hey, Jasmine. I can't undo my video being off. It says the host has disabled. Oh, here we go. Start my video. Hello, everyone. Great to be here. Thanks for the warm welcome and thanks for all the folks jumping on today. I'm Suzanne DeRoche. I'm the Vice President for Clean and Resilient Buildings at NYSERDA. I think probably folks know what NYSERDA is. We're the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, basically New York State's energy office. So again, great to be here at our Buildings Committee meeting. We're going to be talking about commercial building decarbonization and the emerging technologies to support this transition. So excited about this panel. Just a little bit of background about what's happening in New York. We've got some really ambitious climate goals. They are dictated by a state law called the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, or the Climate Act. And really, it sets the ambitious goals because we don't have any time to waste here mitigating the impacts of climate change, reducing greenhouse gases, and building resilience, right? So that our buildings are healthy and safe into the future. What I like about this committee is that we're all working on this together from various different points across the country. And we know that no one organization or solution is going to solve the whole problem, right? We're all going to need to be working together in close partnership between states, between other public entities, cities, private entities, nonprofit sectors. We're really going to need all of us to be at the table consistently to build up that necessary innovation, implementing community wide solutions, driving to raise the necessary capital, et cetera. So, NYSERDA is going to be 50 years next year, 50 years old, something big to celebrate. And really, we're remaining dedicated to meeting the goals of the Climate Act and advancing all of our shared goals. We acknowledge that in the coming years of the evolving political climate, NYSERDA will continue to be objective, credible, and a trusted resource, as we have been for these past 50 years, to residents across the state, as well as to all of you. We share a lot across the states, and I think that, we'll continue to do so. A couple of things that I know when we were getting together for the panel, folks wanted me to highlight in terms of how we're approaching some of our programs and some of our ambition. I'm just going to focus on two or three things now. We did publish the Carbon Neutral Buildings Roadmap. This document is a guide really that shows all of the ways that our buildings need to change and transform in order to become carbon neutral as we continue to modernize the buildings over time. It has policy recommendations. It's got focus areas for technology advancement, as well as things that are ready today that need more wide scale adoption in order to meet these carbon neutral goals. We've also been focusing our efforts in one area around difficult to decarbonize spaces. And I think we're going to hear a little bit more about that from some of our panelists today. So how can we help lead research and provide assistance to building owners that really have these difficult to decarbonize spaces and show replicable pathways for decarbonization, right? Some of that can be phased decarbonization. Some of that needs to be technology, innovation, and investment. And one program that I wanted to highlight is our Clean Heat for All Challenge. This was a three-parted partnership, if that's a way to describe that, between us, NYPA, which is the New York Power Authority, and their purchase and the way that they have purchasing power, and NYCHA, which is New York City Housing Authority, that houses hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers. So we came together. We put all three of these parties together to develop a new heat pump that can better serve the heating and cooling needs of existing multifamily buildings. Basically, these are plug-and-play window units that will go into NYCHA housing, and they've committed to purchase and install 30,000 heat pumps. I wish 300,000, but 30,000 is a big number. And so we are in the midst of that, of a pilot of 2 different models for these plug-and-play window heat pumps that are under testing now. Another example is NYSERDA's Empire Building Challenge. This is a public-private partnership with commercial and in multifamily real estate owners to really help develop innovative design approaches for large buildings in New York City. So again, we are trying to leverage in this program some of our biggest real estate owners that have committed to be carbon neutral, both by providing them with technical assistance as well as doing tech challenges towards decarbonization technologies that need innovation. So without further ado, I am really looking forward to hearing from 3 of our colleagues here that are on the Zoom from different states, levels of government, and private sector. So I don't know if everybody's on camera because I can't really see, but I am joined today by Emily Salzberg, who is the Clean Buildings Managing Director at the Washington Department of Commerce, Michael Blunschke, which I hope I've pronounced correctly, who's a general engineer at the U.S. Department of Energy, and Allison Skid, Director of Global Regulatory Affairs at Rheem. So looking forward to hearing from everyone. I think we're starting with Emily to kick us off.
Great. Thank you so much, Suzanne. Hello, everybody. My name is Emily Salzberg, and as Suzanne mentioned, I'm the Managing Director of our Clean Buildings team within the State Energy Office at the Department of Commerce. So we're a team of about 40 staff members who focus on a very broad range of codes, standards, and programs that are focused on equitably decarbonizing the built environment. So NASEO asked me to focus my comments today on the public building sector. So I'm going to highlight a few programs that we have and talk a bit about state leadership, but I'm happy to field any other questions about our broader programming during the Q&A session. So here in Washington State, we published the State Energy Strategy in 2021. And no surprise there, we found that a combination of energy efficiency and electrification was the least cost pathway for the state to meet its greenhouse gas emissions limits that we have in statute by 2030, 2040, and 2050. So we have a lot of work to do. Here in Washington State, we've got a very progressive energy code. For new construction, we have the first in nation statewide building performance standard for existing buildings, and then a whole host of programming for decarbonizing the built environment that's both federally funded, state funded, leveraged with utility funds as well. So next slide, please. So Commerce's mission is to strengthen communities, and we do this through a very broad range of work, from housing and homelessness to business development, crime victim advocacy, and this is the state agency where the State Energy Office is housed. Before we get going, I just wanted to mention we recently completed a work group that we were legislatively mandated to complete, and it was evaluating the cost of compliance for the state's Clean Buildings Performance Standard. One of the key findings we found coming out of that work group is that funding is the greatest barrier to electrification and efficiency for all building types, but there's some very specific challenges with publicly owned buildings, including state agencies, local government, higher ed, and K-12 schools. And I'd be happy to share a link to that report as soon as it is ready. So here at the Department of Commerce and with my team specifically, we really have worked to reorient the kind of technical assistance we're offering to building owners around the state. We process thousands of inquiries every year working with building owners and are really wanting to be a one-stop shop. Building owners can call our office and be paired with the funding programs that are going to best meet their needs. So we've got a lot of work to do with that. Next slide, please. So in Washington State, we're working very hard to lead by example with our publicly owned buildings. And our Governor Inslee, who's been a 3-term governor, climate and energy has been one of his key initiatives over the 12 years of his leadership. In Washington State, we have Executive Order 2001 that stood up the State Efficiency and Environmental Performance Office, which is situated within the State Energy Office. And so this is the SEEP office. It works with state agencies to achieve reductions in greenhouse gas emissions and eliminate toxic materials from state agency operations. So we've got facility work groups. We provide technical assistance to state agencies all around the state to help reduce their energy use in their buildings. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, here in Washington State, we passed a statewide building performance standard for existing large buildings. This was passed in 2019, and it's important to note that this policy was passed to very intentionally also apply to publicly owned buildings. And there's some very unique challenges in that with how we fund capital upgrades in buildings, publicly owned buildings here in the state of Washington. Our Clean Buildings Performance Standard in Washington is an energy use intensity metric rather than a greenhouse gas emissions metric. We've got tier 1 and tier 2 buildings, so depending on the size of building, the requirements are different. Compliance starts in 2026, and then I do want to note that publicly owned buildings have been required to benchmark since 2010. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, the state recognizes that there is a significant cost of compliance for this law. So the law requires that buildings benchmark, do operations and maintenance and energy management planning, and then buildings that are not meeting their energy use intensity target by building type, then they need to make changes to that building to reduce energy usage. So they can then perform capital upgrades, they can fine tune their operations and maintenance plan to reduce their energy use. We have many alternative compliance pathways. But again, the state did recognize there's a cost of compliance. And so we have a number of different incentive programs that publicly owned buildings are eligible to participate in, again, to help with that cost of compliance. We've got an early adopter incentive program for both tier 1 and tier 2 buildings. So combined $225 million for that. We recently were able to secure funding from the state for an energy audit for publicly owned buildings. So we're able to fund ASHRAE level 2 audits for publicly owned buildings all around the state. And then very new, we were authorized funding to launch a Clean Buildings Performance Grant Program. So we have $45 million, of which $15.5 million is specifically set aside for public buildings for clean buildings compliance. Next slide, please. Another program that we have here in the state of Washington, it's previously been funded out of the capital budget and construction bonds. And in Washington State, we have a Cap and Invest program. And so the Climate Commitment Act and account is what now funds this program. So we have $14 million for publicly owned buildings, including local governments, school districts, federally recognized tribes, and state agencies. And we've worked hard to use this program to help leverage the Clean Buildings Performance Standard. So building owners can apply for this grant program to help pay for the cost of compliance with clean buildings. We are directed to have a certain percentage of the funding go towards small communities. So 20% of that funding must be directed to small communities. And our award criteria is measures need to have a savings to investment ratio greater than 1 and a simple payback of less than 35 years. Next slide, please. And then we also have our state project improvement grants. So we have just under $5 million. These are budgets that are awarded typically on a biennial budget cycle. So every 2 years, we've had these budgets for many biennia now. So it's just under $5 million that is available for state agencies and higher ed buildings that have planned capital projects. And this funding is set aside to help pay for the incremental cost of energy efficiency measures. So if they're planning to do capital upgrades, this program helps to bring in some additional resources. So we're ensuring that those upgrades are as energy efficient as possible. And the award criteria, again, is that savings to investment ratio greater than 1. And we're also looking at projected reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide, please. And that is all I have. I want to make sure we save time for questions. Jasmine, I'm seeing a question in the chat. Do you want me to hold off on that until our Q&A session?
I think we can probably address that now since it's very Washington specific.
All right, so Virginia, it looks like, do the Washington grants cover all the project costs, or is there a match requirement? The answer to that is there is a match requirement, and it used to be a much higher match requirement. And what we were hearing, especially from publicly owned buildings, is that really was a barrier to participation. So we've worked to lower that match requirement and also do have some equity provisions. So if buildings meet certain equity criteria, we're able to reduce the amount of match that's required for that. So thank you for that question. And with that, I'll pass it on to the next presenter, and I look forward to the Q&A session of the program. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Blinchy with the Department of Energy. I work in our Building Technologies office in the Commercial Buildings Integration team. I am a technology manager here. My work focuses on our HVAC portfolio with specifically related to field validations and emerging technologies related to commercial buildings. So today I'm here talking about the Commercial Building Heat Pump Accelerator. This is a program that we launched at the Better Buildings Summit earlier this year, and just wanted to provide a little bit of a background of that and an update where we've come this far. So generally speaking, the Commercial Building Heat Pump Accelerator is a program where we are looking to further the adoption of heat pump rooftop units and understanding those barriers and pushing the technology to be better performing units for the future. So with that, we can go on to the next slide. So why are we doing this heat pump rooftop unit accelerator? Well, for a few reasons. There is a large gap that we've identified for commercial buildings in adoption of heat pump rooftop units. We know that this technology exists, but the actual utilization rate for commercial buildings is fairly low. I think we're around 10 to 12% of commercial buildings actually use heat pump rooftop units. And we know that rooftop units are a majority of the market in terms of commercial buildings. So why the gap between the current technology using either electric resistance or furnaces instead of heat pump rooftop units has kind of spurred this movement. So we're trying to understand the barriers. And one of the barriers is, performance. So that is it's something that we'll get into when we talk about the challenge. But we see this as a technology that's very ready for prime time. There is savings that can be up to 50% of emissions and utility costs, depending on where you are and what building type you have, versus a natural gas rooftop unit. So trying to help the market adopt this technology is going to have benefits for sustainability, but also very much an economic benefit in many parts of the country. So we're going to do this through two complementary efforts. We can think of this as a supply side and a demand side. So the supply side of it, we see, as I alluded to earlier, is that the performance, a lot of our Better Buildings partners and portfolio owners have told us that They just don't think the technology is appropriate for their buildings because it doesn't meet their needs in terms of heating performance. As we know, heat pumps lose their efficiency as we get into colder climates, and some just can't meet the building demand as we get into very cold climates. So part of this effort is the Commercial Building Technology Challenge. This is really focused on just improving that cold weather performance so we don't really need to rely as much on backup heat, and we can really maximize the use of the heat pump for these rooftop units. So that's something we're working on to develop the units of the future. But we know that there's technology that exists today that works. So that's where we get into the demand side. And that's where I'm kind of leading this part of the accelerator, which is the Commercial Building Heat Pump Campaign. So we're working with stakeholders, we're increasing adoption, and we're trying to understand what barriers there are, trying to address those barriers, provide guidance, provide technical support, whatever we can to help building portfolio owners be more comfortable with this decision and plan for the future. So with that, next slide. So I've kind of spoke about this a little bit, but I'll get into more details. The campaign side, which I'm leading, is also being led by Guidehouse. So we're working with Guidehouse to help develop resources. These are all going to be posted on our website, on the Better Buildings website. I think that it's the Commercial Building Heat Pump Accelerator. I can drop the link in the chat later, but we'll have resources, which are decision trees, which are case studies. We really want to highlight where building portfolio owners have already adopted this technology and understand their decision-making process. If they have bills that they can share that show the cost savings, we also want to highlight that. If they had emissions savings that they can highlight. These are all things that I think will help better tell the story of why heat pump rooftop units make sense for commercial building owners. The challenge side is being led by NREL. They are working on developing a specification. It's very close to being released to the public. I know it's been released to the manufacturers. We're working with the major manufacturers of HVAC equipment in this country. So they're all coming together, working to kind of agree on what this specification should look like, and then develop prototypes and eventually commercialize these units with a target of 2027 for these units to be available. So next slide. So just a couple of high-level resources that we've developed and are available on the campaign website. Like I said, we are just kind of building things out and more to come. But we have decision trees, which will help owners, which will help contractors, engineers decide if a rooftop unit, a heat pump rooftop unit is right for their building based on a number of certain criterias. We also have fact sheets, which kind of breaks things down more simply. A lot of times we take for granted that people know what heat pumps are. Some people just don't, and they don't know that it could be a rooftop unit too. So helps spell out some of this kind of the basics there as well. We're also developing estimates on economics of them based on what part of the country you're in, what building type you have, what you might be able to see in terms of utility rate reductions. And then we're also working to develop some guide maps related to government and utility incentives. Next slide, please. So this is another one of the resources. It's available today. If the link works, you could use that. Otherwise, it's on the accelerator page. So it's just more of helping with the decision-making process. So this is a RTU heat pump key considerations, and it really does a great job of breaking down step by step what building owners and contractors, engineers might need to think of before they make the switch to heat pump rooftop units. I say that the worst time to plan for a switch to heat pump rooftop units is when your unit fails. You don't want to have this spur of the moment change in your systems when you might not be ready for it. You want to be able to plan ahead. So we're really working with people to plan ahead. You know, maybe it doesn't make sense to change to a heat pump today, but look down the line. If your building might need equipment replacement in the next 5 years, if your systems are sized in a certain way that you have the technology that's available in your region, then we really want to prepare building owners to make that leap. So on the right-hand side too, we're showing a utility bill savings. Now, This is using the Comstock data, the commercial building stock, which has thousands of generic building models in there, which we can use to help quantify energy savings, do some energy modeling. So we were able to break it down a little bit by region, that's showing both an all-electric heat pump rooftop unit as well as a dual fuel unit, which means a unit that uses gas as a backup source when it gets very cold. We're promoting both of these technologies in our accelerator because we know there's certain parts of the country where all electric options do not make sense. They're not going to make sense from an electricity perspective in terms of upgrading your panel, your substations, things like that. So dual fuel is a very much an option that we see as a bridge technology until the cold climate heat pump challenges are released. Next slide, please. And this is just another example of a guidance document that was recently published. Switchover temperature is a big discussion item with our building owners, trying to understand when they should switch between using their heat pump and when they should initiate their backup heat. A lot of times this is just built into the system controls. But if there is a portfolio owner or engineer, contractor who wants to make this decision on their own and decide that they want to maximize their heat pump rooftop unit versus minimizing using their backup heat, we've tried to spell out a little bit of what that means and how to make those decisions. Next slide. And case studies. We have 2 that are published right now, a few in the works that are going to be really cool, and I am excited about. On the left-hand side, we're showing a few of our inaugural partners to the campaign. So you see some really big commercial building portfolio owners who are working with us. We're building case studies with them, and I think it's really going to help provide some much-needed resources, because one thing that we've noticed is that there really isn't a lot of good case studies out there showing portfolio owners who have switched from a gas rooftop unit to a heat pump rooftop unit. So we want to show those success stories. Columbia Association is a building owner located in Columbia, Maryland. So it's climate zone 4, relatively cold, but not as bad as it gets. But they showed really great savings. They've used dual fuel as an option across multifamily, I want to say gymnasium spaces, as well as community centers. And then LA Unified School District, obviously a very favorable climate for heat pumps, but still worth highlighting how much success they've had in adopting rooftop units that are heat pumps and an immense amount of utility cost savings that they've realized. Next slide. This is just a quick highlight of our work with the challenge. You can see here some of the manufacturers who all gathered at our National Renewable Energy Lab, NREL, on August 27th to have a working session to help develop this specification. It's been in the works for a long time, and we're really excited to release it. So just wanted to give a shout out to all of those manufacturers and keep an eye out for their work in the future. Next slide, please. And then just a quick highlight on the technology challenge again. We're looking to develop these units with field installations by September 2025, ideally, and then have the results validated in the field and in the labs, in the national labs, with the hope that these are meeting a commercialization goal by 2027. Next slide. And just wanted to close out saying we want to work with you. If you know customers that have installed heat pump rooftop units for their sustainability goals who might be considering it, need more resources, just looking for some more people to talk to about this, please direct them our way. We're happy to work with anyone and everyone, and hoping to raise awareness about this really exciting work. So I think that's my last slide, and I'll pass it on to the next presenter.
Great. Thank you, Michael. I'll introduce myself. My name's Allison Skid. I work for Rheem Manufacturing. I'm Director of Regulatory Affairs for the Air conditioning, heat pump, and refrigeration products for the company. And I'm happy to be here to offer the OEM standpoint about our participation in the DOE Commercial Cold Climate Heat Pump Challenge that Michael just described. And in general, just our thoughts about commercial building electrification. So just a little bit more about our perspective. Rheem is a manufacturer of both commercial and residential heat pumps, both ducted and ductless varieties, both air-to-air and air-to-water heat pumps for space heating, as well as heat pumps for water heating. And because we offer both space and water heating appliances, we're accounting for at least 40% or more of the primary energy consumption in buildings. So we're really trying to think about the whole building and how the equipment can maximize efficiency and playing a big role in this electrification journey. So when we consider today's landscape for rooftop units, the reality is the market is still very much gas heating dominated. Packaged rooftop heat pumps, they're increasing in more sizes, more varieties, more stages of capacity. They do exist, but it's still as a smaller portion of the market. And to us, this is for a couple of reasons. So number one, heat pumps are generally optimized for cooling. They historically have been, even in northern US regions. Industry has historically prioritized cooling efficiency, designed around cooling efficiency, set performance and cost targets around cooling efficiency. And so that's really been the dominant factor. And then the second reason is that because, resulting commercial heat pumps in the market are not generally capable of operating in cold climates independently. They can't serve the building independently. They will always need backup heating. So we've got to kind of get out of this loop in order to move them forward. But that's, for us, takes a driver, right? And quite frankly, there hasn't been a strong market demand for cold climate heat pumps in commercial buildings. So our focus has been on meeting the significant changes that we've had on a federal regulatory level. We've had a hike in federal minimum efficiency in 2023. And then in 2025, which is, of course, just weeks away at this point, we're switching to refrigerants with low global warming potential, a complete change to the lineup of air conditioning and heat pumps, complete redesigns that consume a lot of R&D resources. So this is all until we get a challenge, right? And we love challenges. And so we did participate in the last couple of years in the Residential Cold Climate Heat Pump Challenge offered by DOE. Our R&D team worked to enhance heat pump efficiency in cold climates without diminishing the consumer experience. And we were able to achieve uninterrupted heating operation down to minus 23 degrees Fahrenheit. And what we learned there enabled us to improve our control algorithms in our heat pumps. We're now deploying these in our existing product lines as we wait for the demand for those ultra low cold climate products to be desired by the market. The residential experience definitely plays a role in our decision to participate again in the commercial challenge. And we can certainly leverage some of those learnings from residential, but really the commercial challenge has some unique targets and specs. I think Michael described some of these and they'll be published soon. So I'm not going to be spoiling those for everybody, but one thing we'll have to do is measure efficiency performance using the new metrics adopted by DOE for use in 2029. So this is going to be an early use of what we'll be using in the future to report energy efficiency. It means a different method of test with an efficiency calculated to factor more uses of energy than just mechanical heating and cooling. So we've got some challenges and learnings that we're going to have there. We'll need to have some form of controls verification. We'll need to meet challenging dehumidification requirements, and we'll need to limit peak heating demand, look at defrost and cycling. But at the end of the day, what success will mean is optimizing for heating operation at 5 degrees Fahrenheit and sustained heating operation down to minus 10 degrees Fahrenheit. And if the past is any indication, hopefully we'll be surpassing those goals. We'll also, of course, be using low GWP refrigerant in these designs. And this is all on a very accelerated timeline that has us doing some validation by 2026. So we're starting yesterday, right? Already trying to move ahead and make sure that we're tackling this as quickly as we can. So the value of a challenge like this is that we've got this impetus, right? We've got this driver to really expedite innovation, and not just the technical capability to operate at the low ambience, but then to think about the aspects of adapting to the needs of existing commercial buildings, to older infrastructure, emergency replacements, and how to take costs out of those systems, right? Not just achieve the goal, but take the costs out so that they're attractive when you're comparing these to gas alternatives. So let's talk a little bit about how state and federal decarbonization goals can enable the broader adoption of cold climate technologies. To the point that Ed made earlier, state activity, given the election result, could take a larger role as the momentum for electrification potentially shifts from federal to state. Decarbonizing large equipment commercial buildings faces a lot of barriers that that Michael was mentioning that their work is trying to address, right? Unfamiliarity with the solutions, new and any new equipment options, lack of testimonials and case studies, perceived system complexity, lack of simulation tools, and just overall feeling that there will be a low ROI on this type of solution. So really just echoing his points there, is what he described as the reason for the cold climate accelerator. So state and federal decarbonization goals provide market signals as where this future demand may go. And so that's why we're really taking a look at this as we try to plan for where the market is heading. You've got building performance standards, clean heat standards, for example, in Colorado and Massachusetts, right? They're putting in programs designed to reduce building energy use, offer building owners options to improve their energy performance, deliver more clean fuels and electricity for space and water heating. You also have states that announce heat pump installation goals, right? The famous one, California, with their 6 million heat pumps, with that goal for 2030, going to be buoyed by the updates that California made to the Title 24 Energy Code. That's another market signal. We're certainly paying attention to the proposals and drivers for building codes and climate roadmaps. I mentioned Title 24, but obviously, as we heard from the earlier speakers, those plans and programs in Washington, New York will be key drivers as well. In order to really transform the market, these heat pumps are going to have to be incentivized, and they're going to have to be incentivized for heating efficiency, as I mentioned before, not just cooling efficiency. Cold climate performance and cost comparisons are traditionally based on matching cooling loads, right? So we've just got to start thinking about this a little bit differently. Emily earlier mentioned that the funding is essential to making these investments cost effective, and I totally agree with that point. We're seeing a lot of interest on the residential side for the federal tax credit and the state level rebates for high efficiency equipment, which of course those amounts are skewed toward heat pump solutions. So lots and lots of questions that were being asked and a lot of interest from our downstream customers on those. So those dollar signs definitely get attention. The incentives for commercial have the potential to drum up similar interest and demand for heat pumps and cold climate varieties of those, but they'll also need to factor more than just upfront equipment costs. They'll probably need to look at things like electrical panel upgrades, which can be a significant installation cost, especially in replacement. All of this needs to be coupled with a really strong communication to raise awareness, to dispel myths, to socialize the technology progress, and to train specifiers on new tools and products. Suzanne mentioned earlier, this means involvement of many different entities working together in anticipation. For Rheem, our products will be looking ahead down this road, heavily focused on heat pumps in the future, increasing sizes, increasing varieties to meet the upcoming regulations, but and also in support of Rheem's decarbonization and sustainability goals. We want to offer compatibility with existing building management systems, and really have lifetime sustainability in mind, from the material selection and smart features to responsible recycling at end of life. So we're really, really committed to launching this line of heating products, heating and cooling and water heating products, starting as early as this year and next year. So with that, I just wanted to thank the NASEO for allowing us to give our perspectives on this. And we're very excited for the future of commercial buildings and decarbonization.
Great. Thanks so much, all three of you. I think we'll just start to open up the floor and see. I don't see any additional questions in the chat, but does anybody have a question or want to add something? We've got about 5 minutes or so left in our session today. So just looking for if there's any interest from the folks on the call today. Give that a second or two. Okay. Seeing nothing from the audience, I'm going to lob one question out there for the three of you, and then I think maybe we'll wrap. So, I think it would be helpful sort of think about these applications. So, there's so many different options, right? You guys all have a perspective on that. Are there, in your mind, are there applications that are better suited to different technologies that you're seeing sort of start to emerge, right? So any kind of trends, that you're seeing emerge from the work that you do in particular around decarbonization of these commercial buildings, right? I know you're trying to spur innovation at DOE, and Allison, you're looking at specific products, but are you seeing anything catch on? Maybe that's too hard a question on a Friday afternoon.
I'll just speak up, Suzanne, to say that I don't know that what we're learning as we look at solutions for commercial buildings is that there's probably not a one size fits all solution, right? And that's probably an obvious answer. But, when you're looking at schools and you're looking at hospitals and you're looking at convenience stores and these multi-story buildings, I mean, there's so many different ways a solution can be optimized for a building. And we are seeing different categories of, commercial package heat pumps, of VRF, of, 4-pipe fan coil and air to water heat pumps, and all these different things that are coming up that, are really being embraced as solutions. So I think, it's kind of like the refrigerants of the future. Some of these solutions of the future, it's not like one smoking gun, and we're going to have to get good at all of them. So, but the good news is that's options for building specifiers and builders.
And do you see, I don't know, Emily, did you want to jump in there?
I was just going to make a couple comments, if that's helpful. Yeah, I think one of the things that we've learned through the process of running a number of our heat pump programs is the importance of being able to incentivize the cost of electrical upgrades as part of that program. So I think that, just is a really important component. And, to your question, one thing that I would love to see take hold, and would love if anybody on the call has experience in this, but when we install heat pumps, the commissioning and ongoing operations and maintenance is so very important to ensure that we're realizing those savings. And so I'm wondering if anybody has implemented any operations and maintenance programs in conjunction with their incentive programs. We're looking at doing that with some of our residential programs and small commercial, but I would love to learn more from folks who have some of that experience.
Anyone from the audience, shall we say? Oh, that's
odd on a Zoom call. Reach out offline.
Great. Michael, any last thoughts? Otherwise, I think maybe we've gotten pretty close to the end of the time, and I'll wrap us up.
say not specific technology trends can I really speak to, but trends that I'm hearing from our portfolio owners is things need to be simpler and things need to be cheaper. So we're always trying to figure out how that fits into the conversation with electrification. And yeah, so there is so many amazing technologies out there that are very efficient that can, have zero GW refrigerants and things like that. But if they are way too expensive, they're never going to be adopted. So that is something that we are very much aware of. And if they're way too complicated, engineers aren't going to know how to design them, and contractors aren't going to want to deal with them. So those are the trends that I think are kind of the two big market drivers.
Yeah, great. Thanks. And I see Ron dropped in that Hawaii is hoping to implement the measured track for the HER rebates verification. So perhaps can share more on HB operations in the future. So thanks, Ron. All right. Well, with that, we are at time. I don't know, Jasmine, if you want to say a few words to wrap up, or we just say thanks to everybody for showing up on a Friday afternoon.
I would have said exactly that, and thank you so much, Suzanne, for moderating. But yeah, that I think is a good place to end. We'll be sharing this recording around and any of the slides that were shared as well, to folks that want to revisit anything or folks that weren't able to attend. But thank you all so much for your questions, engagement, and attention this afternoon.
Thank you. Great to see you all. Have a great weekend.
Take care.